Well, going back to one of our main stories tonight, confirmation from Gauteng police that 11 suspects have now been arrested in connection with a mass shooting at a tavern in Bekkersdal over the past weekend. 10 people died, while a further 9 are still in hospital recovering from wounds sustained in that attack. We don't yet know the motive for the shooting, but let's speak to the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Community Safety in Gauteng's legislature, Dr Bandile Masuku, joining us on SABC News tonight. Good to have your time, sir. So as things stand, let's start, in fact, with your reaction to this apparent swift action by the police in tracking down and indeed arresting suspects in connection with the shooting in Bekkersdal.
I think we should commend and welcome the arrests and commend the police officers for their swift action, in particular in relation to the 3 big incidences that have occurred in our province. And I think this is just to show that when the police are well coordinated and working with the communities, they can be able to deal with some of these crimes that we see in our communities. But we do welcome and commend the work of the police services.
The problem, though, Dr. Masuku, is that there's a trend developing in Gauteng, isn't there? I'm reminded of the mass shooting in Soweto in 2022. In July of this year, your committee also had to issue a statement about a similar incident at a drinking place. This was, I think, in Olivenhout-Bosch. 3 weeks ago, on the 6th of December, there was the shooting in Soulsville. And then just a few days ago, we had the shooting in Bekkersdal. So something is clearly wrong as far as taverns being the target for mass shootings.
Yeah, I think there has been an established pattern, if you look at it in terms of the research and the work that has been done, that places of entertainment, which are so-called taverns, beans, are a source of most of our crimes in our country and in our province. And now we see this pattern of mass shooting, and it's also in contextual aspect that it's also related somehow to illegal mining in some instances. In some of the other instances, it's just common crime that actually occurs. And I think it's something that the police must do something about it. One of the issues that we had actually proposed to the police was the issue around increased visibility around these places of entertainment, which are ashebins and taverns, but also to engage the liquor board and also the trade, the Liquor Traders Association, to make sure that they are also contribute to make sure that their places are actually safe.
But how do you begin to do that, for instance, when in at least 2 of these cases, upon investigations, one of the things police found was that the tavern or the shebeen in question was either operating on a fake license or one that had been obtained fraudulently. So they're not necessarily businesses that are on the books, if you will, of the authorities.
Yeah, we need also to work with the communities, because the communities are the ones that are patrons in these actual taverns, and they also have to help us in making sure that there is a level of compliance in the spaces that they entertain themselves, so that we avoid this type of actual situations. We know that we also raised the concern with the liquor board, in terms of the number of the licenses that they give out, which are a problem. And sometimes some of the licenses are given to shebeens and taverns which are closer to institutions such as schools and churches and so on. And this is a concern that we've raised with the liquor board. But we need to work with the communities to make sure that themselves they also act in making sure that they spend time in spaces where it is compliant and it's licensed and it's legal for them to actually to trade.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because some of the people who operate these taverns, these shebeens, if you are familiar with the context of a township, these aren't people who come out of nowhere. These are neighbors, community members who people have lived with for years. So they do business with them regularly. So it's not necessarily to their benefit to report them. And I wonder if there isn't an element whenever there are these mass shootings to go for the low-hanging fruit. So you arrest the owner of the tavern, but the bigger problem of violence persists. And I'm not saying that people should be allowed to operate illegally, but that is, it feels at least, like the low-hanging fruit from an enforcement perspective.
It is a low, like, actual hanging fruit, and it also doesn't resolve the problem completely. And that's the reason why we require, more work that needs to be done with the Traders Association, with the Liquor Board themselves, to make sure that we are able to do a whole lot of regulation and enforcement and compliance. And above all, is that there is a matter of an economics and social element to it, that these are individuals that really, they are not doing it out of committing crime, but it's because of the need that they have to make some ends meet to it. But we need to make sure that the communities work with the police, they work with the liquor board to make sure that every places of entertainment are compliant and there's enforcement that goes on.
Right. I want to circle back to something that you said earlier, Dr. Masuku, regarding potential motives, if you will, for the attacks that we see playing out at taverns. Organised crime comes up. I think it was 3 years ago. Was it in the Soweto incident where it was suspected that that mass shooting was linked possibly to a turf war around illegal mining in the Gauteng province as well? Where does that leave the response by the police? Because until you've dealt with the organised crime element, you can't simply deal with the issue at the tavern door, so to speak.
Definitely, the issue of illegal mining is a bigger problem, in a sense, because if you look at it and follow it very closely, you will see the one that happened in Soweto, for an example, it was a turf war, correctly. The one in Bekkersdal, generally Bekkersdal has got a bigger problem of illegal mining for a very long time, and it's something that needs to be actually done and be actually resolved. But the issue with it is that, in the pyramid that categorizes the levels of people who are involved in illegal mining, these are people that usually are at the lowest part of the pyramid, and those are the ones that fight for the turf, and the police need to also focus on them.
On that note, then,
we have to deal with this, the ones that. Yes, okay, you can interrupt.
Just on that point, I was going to say, are you satisfied then, given how you've laid out the chain of command and the problem, that the police in particular have a clear enough grasp of the problem and what is needed to respond? Because the number of the mass shootings is rising, and we're not saying, to be clear definitively, that this incident in Bekkersdal was linked to illegal mining, because police have not confirmed that as yet.
Yes, remember, we in Gauteng, we receive a quarterly report from the Volume Gold operation, and there have been some successes that have been actually scored in terms of arresting, particularly those who are at the level 3 to 4, 5 going up. And now it means that we have to turn our attention to those who commit petty crimes, and including a crime of murder, like that's the ones that we've seen. And it's something that maybe they have to turn their attention to them and make sure that we were able to deal and close this illegal mining actually for good.
Good to talk to you. Thank you so much. Bandile Masuku, the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Community Safety in Gauteng, speaking to us about mass shootings, particularly at taverns in the province.